Back in December, Pilchuck selected artists Alana Biffert and Marta Gorski as the winners of an open call to fill the windows of the school's Pioneer Square space in downtown Seattle. Their exhibition brings together their work in glass, their installation expertise, and their longtime friendship. Titled CROMMAEA, the piece addresses online practice and identity and opens a platform to divulge and explore the dark and light sides of social media. As the artists state, we want to acknowledge the intimate moments revealed and eliminate the stigmas attached to the body. The work mimics our obsession with public access to private spaces and considers the interaction between the subject, the lens, and the viewer. We want to invite others to reflect on the directional pulls we cannot see that influence us without even knowing. To augment their installation, Alana and Marta sat down with Dr. Jennifer Gunsaullus, a sociologist, intimacy, and communication coach, and author of From Madness to Mindfulness, Reinventing Sex for Women. In their conversation, the three discussed themes of vulnerability, authenticity, and the many layers and facets each of us choose to conceal or reveal.
Humans have long objectified themselves and other people. Instant gratification and consumerism are making us flippant, expectant, and disposable. As the unfamiliar boundaries of the digital era expand, our cultural facets shift, transforming humanity into the land of objecthood. Social media interaction is taking on a universal skin as it weaves itself into the fabric of our society. Now more than ever, our screens are saturated with images of other people's lives, bodies, and the objects that surround us. We have a global pandemic that has created and inspired the world to build up its online presence. Whatever your occupation, race, religious beliefs, gender, dietary needs, or sexual preferences, there is a social media platform available for you to connect with like-minded people. This can be one of the most wonderful parts of social media and the internet. The ability to connect with others all around the world is a beautiful thing. It's easy to understand why we are starting to see people from all generations sign up. Social media is a form of empowerment, allowing us to have the freedom to express our choices and have our voices heard. It permits the lost to be found and the rejected to find acceptance in a shared understanding of reality. There are questions that are being brought up in reflection of this growing sector of the World Wide Web. In no way have we been able to predict what the effects of this will be. It is challenging to find the right place to begin this conversation, as this topic is broad and overwhelming. Though there are multiple avenues that need to be discussed, CROMMAEA addresses our online practice and identity, opening a platform to divulge and explore the dark and light side of social media. We want to acknowledge the intimate moments revealed and eliminate the stigmas attached to the body. This work mimics our obsession with public access to private spaces and considers the interaction between the subject, the lens, and the viewer. We want to invite others to reflect on the directional pulls we cannot see that can influence us without even knowing. The allure of the gaze is a catalyst to absorb content, and further investigation challenges the mindfulness of the onlooker. The growth has been exponential and a cause for attention to be drawn as everything is online now. There is so much value placed on our online presence these days that we forget to be mindful in the moment, as social media can hold our attention mindlessly. There is growing confusion between facts and opinions developing as we all conform and shape our own versions of reality. Our intention is not to attempt the unraveling of the cleverly disguised manipulations that form and influence our screens, but to bring the idea of mindfulness into everyday posting. With airbrushing and other editing techniques at our fingertips, what used to be exclusive to media use in the past is vastly becoming a part of our everyday photo adjustments. People are self-censoring out of the fear of not being good enough. Being rejected, trolled, or canceled is becoming a real fear for all generations as technology soars forward and human beings remain the same.
Rapid fire objectification is taking place as we habitually scroll over image after image. Lines are being blurred as our interpretation of what is real and what is not shifts. Learning to be learning how to be in control of programming your own mind is so important. We are driven daily through visual and auditory influences without realizing it. Our minds are in a vulnerable place as we sift through our feeds, thinking it's without consequence, when in fact our invisible enemy pulls our focus and awareness. This compromises our self-worth, value system, and self-compassion as our inner dialogue is pushed and conformed unconsciously. Being able to shift our mindset into conscious awareness, allowing mindfulness to be the state in which we digest this dialogue, is the challenge at hand. So first, let us clarify what mindfulness is. According to Dr. Jen Gunsaullus' research and book, From Madness to Mindfulness, she writes, the effort to attend non-judgmentally to present moment experience and to sustain this attention over time, with the aim of cultivating stable, non-reactive, metacognitive awareness. A shorter definition is that mindfulness is focused awareness in the present moment without judgment. Dr. Jen Gunsaullus goes on to quote John Kabat-Zinn, a professor of medicine emeritus, who has done tremendous work in bringing mindfulness into the mainstream American society and the medical field. He writes, the habits of ignoring our present moments in favor of others yet to come leads directly to a pervasive lack of awareness of the web of life in which we are embedded. So our first question for Dr. Jen is, how did you come to discover and understand mindfulness?
Thank you, first of all. Thank you for doing this project, and thank you for bringing mindfulness into it in a whole new way with some really cool nuances and depth. And I'm happy to be a part of this. I was introduced to mindfulness over 17 years ago. I had just moved to San Diego from the Northeast and went to a meditation class because I had been experiencing a lot of stress. I was getting my PhD in sociology and working on my dissertation and just not feeling good and having chest pains. And I went to, I'd heard meditation is good for you. And I went and I sat in this class. There's probably maybe 6 of us or something. And we're sitting on cushions on the floor. And the woman leading it started talking about mindfulness. And I was like, what is this mindfulness you speak of? And it just, from then on, I was like, oh, this is something. Like, this is really something. This idea of being able to observe what's happening inside of us and what's happening outside of us, and not just feel swept away from the moment, because we have thoughts and emotions and icky sensations in our bodies and worries and fears, or we're just rehashing the past or worried about the future. And learning that we can actually train our brains. We could gently, kindly, compassionately train our brains to pay more attention in the present moment, and then not judge what's going on, not attaching value to it, negative or positive, and just observing it and experiencing it and staying with it. And it's hard because it hurts when you do it right. It hurts a lot. Like, it's not about blissing out. It's about being with whatever shows up in that moment. There's a lot of crap that shows up from moment to moment that we don't want to be with, or is boring or scary, or, our negative stories we're telling ourselves. And when you can really drop into your body and into the sensations, though, it feels uncomfortable. But at the core of mindfulness is learning this type of mindfulness is learning how to gain comfort with discomfort, and not want to run from it, not want to lash out to others, not want to numb yourself, not want to distract yourself, not want to brush it under the rug, but be like, yeah, what is this thing going on for me that makes me want to scream at my partner, or makes me want to retreat from everybody else? Or how am I doing my second shot of tequila right now? Like, what is driving this? And then gently, kindly, compassionately, looking at it. And the compassion piece is so important, because you could be really mindful in a moment, but still be really mean to other people. Right. You're like, yeah, no, I'm paying attention to everything. But you want to have that compassion piece where you're compassionate towards others and you're balancing it with compassion towards yourself. So yeah, that's how I got introduced at a very hippie-like meditation place in Ocean Beach, San Diego, which is pretty perfect introduction to San Diego. And I've just been running with it for the past 17 years.
Great. So tell us a little bit about your book and what some of your influences were and your inspirations were for writing it.
Thank you. So the title of the book is From Madness to Mindfulness, Reinventing Sex for Women. And I am merging my background as a sociologist and that educational awareness and knowledge about, sexuality theory and different research, social psychology research, as well as sexual health training that I've had in the past, and body image research and such things. And the first point I'm trying to make is, like, any women out there, anything you're struggling with, you're not alone and you're normal. You're not broken. There's so many ways that our society ill prepares us as females. I mean, everybody overall, frankly, in American society, but my focus is on females here. And if you were, assigned female at birth and raised that way, that comes with a whole host of expectations put on you, which is slowly changing over time, but still, that you should be nice, you should be pretty, you should be sexy for others, you should put the needs of others first. You want to be outspoken, but not too outspoken. You want to be empowered, but not too empowered. Yeah. And then, and that there's still so much, especially coming through families or certain cultures or religious beliefs, so much shame and embarrassment, especially for women about their bodies, that it's never good enough, that it's shameful to feel pleasure, faking orgasms, not being taught about the clitoris as part of your anatomy and part of your pleasure, embarrassment around masturbation, feeling coerced into sexual situations. There's just, it runs the gamut of all these different ways that we can get a lot of negative messages where we feel very disconnected from our own bodies, or that our bodies are here to serve or please others. And, so letting women know you're not alone, and then teaching applied mindfulness skills. Like, what do we do with this then? Once we realize it, how do we actually choose to move towards this shame, towards this embarrassment, towards this discomfort, instead of avoiding it or numbing ourselves? And I teach the skills on how to do that. How do you have conversations with a partner that you've never had before, that you're really afraid to have? How do you cultivate compassionate and effective communication? How do you apply this towards your body image? How do you create a version of your sexuality and sexual expression that feels authentic and vulnerable to you? And how do you pull back the armor that you have and slowly step into that, move through the fear and discomfort? And then all of a sudden you have choices that you never had before. And that's part of the epitome of mindfulness, is to have choice where you never had it before. So and then there's lots of coaching. There's a whole chapter on, like, how do you put this into action? And I have all different activities throughout the book, because so I think I go from kind of looking at sociological and psychology research to what does this look like in relationships and with body image and around our passion and desire in long-term relationships. And then how do we, put it all into action in a very coaching way. And each chapter has worksheets at the end that you can actually fill out.
Yes, I really enjoyed actually reading your book and visiting those exercises. I did stay true to that.
Did you do them? Oh, good.
I did.
And like I was like, it's one thing to read and think about mindfulness, but you have to do it. You got to do the discomfort of it. So good for you.
Okay, so I'm going to keep reading here. I love what you had to say there. It was great to listen to your discovery of mindfulness there.
Thank you.
Art installation is a multimedia work that includes photo images printed on vellum that are highly pixelated and distorted. We want these images to read as a universal and familiar skin. The photographs are set behind hand-polished lenses and peepholes to accent and further distort the imagery, inviting the viewer to investigate. This work explores what it means to be seen and be vulnerable without shame. CROMMAEA is self-identity, creating our own illusions and distortions at a macro level each layer composed by perspectives of the body with the proposed idea of radical acceptance. We want there to be a particular quality of morality felt through the familiar textures and folds found within the imagery. To initiate a compassionate, present, mindful connection and create curiosity with each discovery, inspiring the ability within each of us to rehumanize the gaze. So what does mindful online posting look like, and how can we be sure we are not being misled when we are the onlooker? The answer is scary. The truth is these questions are only now starting to come up, and the answers are just as unclear as the questions we should be asking ourselves when we choose to share parts of our lives with the entire world. As media continues to evolve, we need to evolve and cultivate literacy with our online presence. It is important to have the tools to build intellectual connections during this global lockdown and pandemic. Culturally and economically, the world has come to slow down, and people are having to listen to their bodies more. Our fast-paced lives are no longer propelling us through each day. No one is pressed with the obligation to go to work with a cold. The lockdowns have left us with an abundance of personal time and less human contact. People are turning to their computers to get through the lack of interaction, as a connection is one of our more prevalent human desires. Within the structure of pausing, inspired people have surfaced on social media, offering the world access to personal growth programs. People are starting to meet via video, allowing the world to come together to maintain our minds, bodies, and spirit. Right now, we are all in this discomfort. We're all in the discomfort of this together, doing what we can to meet our social needs and attempting to be comfortable. So, Dr. Jen, now that we are socially distancing and experiencing a loss of human contact, we are seeing more people sign up online to fill these voids and build new relationships. Do you think it's possible to form deep connections and relationships with people over the internet?
Absolutely. I mean, you know, folks have been doing it for, gosh, you know, because it was probably the early 90s that folks started doing things like on bulletin boards online before we really had the internet. So, absolutely, because I think often folks it's easier to share more personal things, or at least it can be, although I have some information that they may be changing with the younger generations, that you've been steeped in it at all times. So, but yeah, I mean, because you're talking, you're sharing, you're ideally being yourself, and the other person seeing you and hearing you and connecting in that way. I would say the one danger is, unless so, like if you're actually FaceTiming somebody or Zooming with them, and you're seeing their face and their mannerisms and all, I think you really get a much greater sense of that person. You get how they carry themselves, how they present themselves, their tone of voice. I think it's just easier to sort of tap into what's authentically somebody and what's not. If you're only doing messaging or texting or DMs, it's much easier to project into somebody else what we think they are or what we want them to be.
Right.
And so I think, you know, in the past year, video connections with people has increased so much. And I do think that's powerful. And also, like, you know, you're not seeing it with me because I have a backdrop, because this is my job to talk to people. So, but in general, you're seeing people's homes too. You know, you're seeing people's dogs and cats, and they're turning, and you see the cat's asshole. Those are like the best ones, I think.
Or their kids running in and out and being embarrassing.
Absolutely.
Throwing tantrums.
Yeah. And the whole thing, you know, their partner coming in, and people have seen stuff where it's like, what, is there something going on behind you? And just, yes, that's my husband. He's trying to get out of the room. I didn't want anybody to see him, but you see somebody crawling on the ground, you know? So I don't know. We actually, in some ways, it's become much more personal. I've heard some research saying that a fair number of people say they actually feel closer to their team members at work than they did before, which you'd think it was the exact opposite. So I think there's been, even though we're not in person, like there's been veils, right? There is, in some ways, there's just more authenticity.
Right, because you're sort of curating yourself when you go into the office. You know, you dress a certain way, you act a certain way, you have a certain persona, and you go out into that world. And so once you're at home, you're kind of left to be more who you are, I guess.
Yes, it seems to be. And that the standards have just, gone down. Now, the side note is I heard this from a administrator at a university who teaches sex education and such. And she said that she assumed that doing Zoom ask the sexperts or something, that the students would feel more comfortable asking questions on Zoom than they would like in a room with other people. And they actually found it seemed to be the opposite. They would private chat it, but they weren't willing to put their face behind a question. And the best that we could kind of theorize is, and so we're talking about 18, 19-year-olds. So definitely the iGen or Generation Z, whatever you want to call them, that maybe because anytime they're on video, that is supposed to be part of their online curated image that needs to be perfect. And they need to think about everything they say before they put it out there.
It's too on the spot for them.
Yes. And that they don't get to curate it then. But then I guess in person, it would somehow feel not as scary, maybe because everybody's doing the same thing. Right. I don't know. But that to me is a very interesting question of how much is, especially for the iGen, how much is their ability to be vulnerable and their ability to be authentic? Is there no separation between their online presentation of self because it's been so wired in from a young age? And these are things we don't know yet. Right. People who don't remember a time without internet. And so everything is their presentation of themselves on there and and the fear of being judged by others. I wonder also, it's like when you're faced with the opportunity to be private or be public, if that has, what kind of merit that plays. And, I'm sure that if I had the opportunity to ask in sex questions and over video, like in the group, or to DM them, then I'm almost positive that I would DM them just because I think of. That's a very good point. All of that stuff, the shame, the not sounding slutty or because if you want to talk about sex, then that means that you are automatically something wrong with you. And we're going to judge you with anything you say. It's going to be wrong. And that's interesting. I think probably then the comparable thing, which I do this with some groups when I do public speaking, is anonymous note cards that they get to write their questions on those. It's just hard because they write, like 5 words. And I'm like, I have no context for it. It'd be much easier if somebody did. But I think that is a comparable thing that, folks, it is just easier to do that than to feel everything we're talking about, to feel, like vulnerability and fear of shame and fear of judgment. We tend to really feel in our chest and in our solar plexus, and our heart can pound some. And it's a scary feeling because I think, as humans, we are innately social creatures. And if others judge us, like if you're sort of looking evolutionary wise, we want others to like us because we want them to take care of us and vice versa, to live in collaboration because we live best in collaboration. And so the fear of people not liking you or judging you, even if it's not logically making sense in the context, that fear, I think, is so just visceral for most of us. It keeps us frozen in place. I mean, there's so much around sex stuff, particularly for females. So that is, again, like I help get in touch with all of that. Breathe into it, say yes to it, move towards that discomfort, know you're okay, trust that you're stronger than you think you are. So, yeah.
Excellent.
Alana, do you want to ask the second question, or do you feel like we've answered it?
Oh, sorry.
That's
I
okay.
do feel like we've answered it, actually. I was going to say to you, what are some of the tools you would recommend? You think video chat is important and why? But I feel like, yes, you said that, yes to that.
Well,
and I think that that's really exciting news, because I feel like with isolation and less human contact, it's nice to know that the tools that we have available to us, such as video chatting, offer us an opportunity to develop strong online relationships regardless of their.
Absolutely. I mean, there's nothing like, though, meeting that person in person, and which is like, and if you've developed a lot of line, it is so awkward, because you have emotionally advanced, you intellectually know this person and mentally and emotionally advanced to a place of maybe connection and safety. And then you're like in their same presence and you're like, oh, this is weird. This is awkward. Like, I don't know how to hold myself. Like, what do I do here? And so it needs to kind of catch up in person. But honestly, I think the other piece too, I also heard this from like a journalist that she was talking to some young women who they had such a curated presentation online. If they these were heterosexual women, if they met a guy and started dating, and then they were like DMing, and they're very like clever in what they're writing and stuff like that. And if it went on for too long, then they were afraid to meet them in person or over video, because they felt like they couldn't.
You can't curate yourself if you're too on the spot. Yeah.
Right. And they felt like they could never match up to that. So I do think, and they're just, again, afraid of being judged, afraid of being rejected. And that feels horrible for all of us. So the sooner you can connect through, I mean, right? Because you hear me talking, you get a pretty good sense of my personality here. So like you see what you're gonna get. It was in terms of to date me. I was like,
I think the colorful background says a lot.
Right.
And the vulva.
Yeah.
And the vulva puppet. Yeah. This is what you're gonna get.
Versus my blank box, right? You get nothing.
Actually, I was thinking everything contrasts really nicely for you, Marta. You've got the white, the black, the white.
My Eames chair. Very well curated.
Yes. You keep up guessing, Marta.
I try. Awesome. Okay, so let's continue here. We're going to talk about personal identity and curation. So the technologically driven online communities are moving really quickly, creating fast changes. Our past day-to-day activities didn't include talking into a screen about your day, the weather, your food choices, and workout recommendations. Our lives are now being broadcasted by choice. The spotlight is available for every one of us as we curate our own stage and call it life. With our online presence becoming more curated from all angles, including our appearance and setting, and also our words, values, and attitudes, confusion grows with it. How can we bridge the gap between our real selves and our curated online personas? As we evolve and attempt to form a narrative for an online identity, while our daily digital outputs, interactions, and repetitive patterns are creating false standards and more insecurities. There's a growing disconnect as our sense of worthiness is questioned by the devices we carry around and rely on for most things, including convenient and automatic performances. It takes strength to speak from the heart, risking embarrassment and pushing through the fear of risking shame. On some accounts, we're seeing people putting themselves out there, letting down their walls, and posting without filters. On the other side, we see people who choose not to bear all and are less open and more filtered. What makes us vulnerable makes us beautiful. We are all guilty of clicking away, flushing through images, and engorging in the windows that are made to be probed, praised, and also sponsored. The industry is not made for the timid. To be considered valid, your posts must fit the algorithms of most important, saved, shared, commented, and liked. Throughout the exhibition of our work, we wanted to address this approach to social media and allow a natural narrative to thrive. It's important, as we all use these platforms, to accept ourselves without censorship and filtration. Our images reveal interesting angles and unassertive tells as we want the viewer to let go of any personal projections or comparisons, offering a bare and uninfluenced experience less visited, evoking compassion with the imperfection. So, Dr. Jen, in your book, you discuss the role of that media plays on influencing us. You say, the media plays a particularly insidious role in what we learn about our bodies and our sexuality because we're often not even aware that we're learning it. We often think that we don't notice advertisements or that television and videos are just for fun, but not impactful. Research repeatedly shows that this is not the case. Social norms, belief systems, gender roles, etc., are all learned through how we see others portray those roles. So our question for you is, are we creating identity issues through the disassociation of oneself versus their online existence? And do you have any advice in this area for healthy development?
Can you reframe that question or phrase it in a different way? Because I'm not sure I totally know what you're asking.
Sure. So let me think here. We're creating, we create identity issues through disassociation between ourselves, our authentic selves, and our online existence, right?
Sometimes, yes.
Sometimes. So
yes.
So I guess the first question is, do you think that we're creating identity issues through disassociating our authentic self with our online self?
Well, I don't know how much of it is disassociation and how much of it is just different facades of ourselves. And that we choose to show some aspects of it, but we don't show other aspects. That to me.
Right.
Yeah.
So then that we mean it's not a disassociation because we maintain, our personal or our non-online self in other facets of our lives.
Yeah. So I would say, I mean, I don't know that I've broken it down in this way before, but I would think it would be different aspects that we all have. I could be the fun, lively part of me that's very authentic, but I can also be like the nerdy, dorky academic side of me and something that's also authentic. So I get, we have different parts, but there's certain parts that are particularly, engaging on social media will get you attention, right? Sometimes it's anger and rage. Sometimes it's, for women, it's definitely showing their bodies in various ways or in traditionally sexy ways. Now we have some around female sexual empowerment in women's bodies, presentation of not traditional sexy things. Like you show your cellulite, you show your fat on your belly, your lopsided breasts, although you can't really show that on social media, I guess. Not on Instagram, at least. And so then there's like pride in the quote unquote flaws of our body, which is great. But then that's almost starts to become, that vulnerability is then commodified in that you're vulnerable, but you're probably going to get a lot of likes and comments for it. And you go girls and stuff like that. So that to me is where it becomes really bastardized. There's parts of ourselves, what are we putting forward? And I mean, I guess part of the question is, do we all have authentic selves or not? Or
right.
Are we all of these, different pieces and then we choose which ones? But I do think maybe some of the layers are sort of farther out and some of the layers are farther in, and the authenticity is often around, at least in the way I'm talking about it, is the things that we're very vulnerable about, that we're afraid of being rejected for or judged for, that we judge ourselves for, that we experience shame around. Those to me are that's the stuff we hold close to the vest because we're afraid to let others see it.
So true.
Yeah.
And I do feel like within CROMMAEA, we have quite a few different layers of images, layers of glass to talk about the depth basically of people and the barriers we put up and being afraid to show certain natural crevices or cellulite and feeling like we're not going to match up basically.
Yeah.
I just like that idea of like, we should all just show our natural crevices. I just, that sounds like a fun party. So I'm not, did I answer your question, Marta, or is there a second part to that? I'm not sure.
There is a bit of a second part. So I guess what we're looking for is some advice on how to develop sort of your various, maybe the question is, how do you develop your various layers in a healthy way while maintaining your authenticity? Like, do you have some advice that you can share, some recommendations?
Yeah, I mean, so like at its core, like I said, mindfulness is studying what's happening inside of you and what's happening outside of you. So, I mean, it would be amazing if everybody paused before they posted anything on Facebook or Instagram or Snapchat or Twitter. That would be amazing. First of all, if people just paused, that would be amazing. And then reflecting on what's my motivation here? What's my intent? What do I feel is important to say or show, and why? What am I hoping for from others? What am I secretly hoping for from others?
Right.
And then, and doing this in a really gentle curiosity type of way. You're not beating yourself up. You're not making yourself wrong. The main tool, and I talk about this in my book, is like this triangle of awareness.
Yes.
Of reflecting, like what are my thoughts? What are my interpretation? What's the story I'm telling myself? What emotions am I feeling? And do I feel that anywhere in my body? And this is always a great tool to drop into the moment and be like, what's really going on for me right now? And then reflecting on that, be like, okay, does this post reflect the best of me? In an authentic way. And then the thing is though, and I know, I have to sell myself online,
right?
In that, this is how I make a living. People have to know about my work and hear me speak and see my posts. Some places I do it better than others. I'm working with an intern right now, a university student nearby, on Instagram. And she's like, so what's your intent with your Instagram feed? And I was like, that is an excellent question. I really want it to be easy and I get to post things that are fun to me.
Right.
I was like, there is pretty much no intent. I could see why I'm having trouble growing my Instagram following. There's no theme. It's just random shit that makes me happy.
You're not necessarily creating a brand or branding yourself.
No, and I think it's to the detriment of my business.
Right.
And for me, I've published a book. I want to publish another book. I'd like to get an agent for it. I want to work with a bigger publisher. For all of those things, I need a greater social media following. So there is an interesting, and so it's fun to be working with this intern. I was like, okay, I do like being strategic on social media because it's interesting to me. The social psychology aspect of it is very interesting to me. But then how do I wed that with me being me, or just more of actual just education? I was like, I could just do more sex education instead of just posting, pictures of me drinking a latte somewhere because I'm happy in that moment. So yeah, I think pausing and asking ourselves all that questions, reflecting on what do I feel like I contribute to this platform? What do I think I get from it? Can I do better? And I don't mean that in a judgmental way, but I mean that in terms of just, can I bring more mindfulness to this? And that, can I be more part of the solution instead of part of the problem?
Right.
And not in a way of holding yourself to impossible standards or judging yourself, but just as, like I said, this kind of gentle inquiry. And frankly, the more we do it, the more then we could read it in others. And the more then we could read somebody else's that you're like, that post kind of made me feel like shit, but I could tell that's their shit. I'm not even going to pay attention to this next, and then you could feel it in you and let it move through you and move on. And so it doesn't kind of hang on you and leave a negative impact in that way. So yeah, I just, being an inquiry and asking questions and slowing down a little bit. So
that's really helpful information. I'm glad to hear you bring all of those things up. I think it's going to tie in nicely to the next part of our discussion. Actually, I do bring up your triangle of awareness. So it's
Oh,
cool to see
yay.
that you brought a little.
Feel free to throw that up there again.
Well, what's funny, what's on the other side, because this is from almost a year ago, one of the very first things I had to convert immediately to online. It was like a book talk. It was supposed to be in Seattle. I did not go to Seattle because that was first hit. And so on the other side, because it was Saturday night, it was the first Saturday night, like people were really home. And so on the other side is drink now, which is literally the opposite of mindfulness. But I was trying to turn my book talk and answering people's questions into a drinking game. It's like every time I say mindfulness, take a drink.
It's really funny.
I mean, it was literally the first weekend of shutdown. I was trying to think outside the box.
Exactly a year ago now, pretty much, isn't it?
Yeah, it was next weekend. Yeah, for us in San Diego. Yeah.
Yeah, it's been a long road. It feels like I didn't expect it to be as long as it's been.
No, none of us did.
I think I did. I'm expecting another full year of this.
Okay.
That's just like my tiny pessimist.
I don't want any of your choo-choo on me. Keep it.
So we had a follow-up question about balancing without filtering out the real us, and how do you think people can cultivate mindfulness with their social media posts? But I really think that you addressed that in your last answer.
I want to add in one other thing though, because vulnerability and sharing uncomfortable things, we want that to be a mindful choice, in that it's not safe to be vulnerable with everybody. It's not emotionally safe. Many people aren't deserving of that, and that they don't have the emotional maturity, or they don't have our best interests in mind. And so that's another thing. That's like a sort of cultivation of your intuition, of your knowing of yourself and reading of other people, and realizing, you don't want to use vulnerability or quote unquote authenticity in a way that you're trying to get something from someone, or to be a martyr, or to get attention, or to perform, or also because you don't have good boundaries for yourself, so a major
like
aspect
using it to validate, to gain validation from other people.
Or get attention, or something, or to feel important or valued. And or just because you're trying this out. I don't want people to go out there and be like, well, that did not go well. So it's to me, it's a slow, if you have a lot of armor up, you have that up for a reason. You have it up because you've been hurt. And that armor keeps you in one piece, so you don't want to dishonor it or judge yourself for it. But, I've been using this imagery recently of like a little box that's kind of like a cage. And it's like, that's our comfort zone that most of us stay in. And it's not like, it can have pillows and blankets and you could lounge back and it feels great, but it's still a cage. It keeps you stuck in place. And then I like to think that then there's a circle around that. And it's just outside of that, like that's where the magic happens in life, where you start to test your boundaries out there. You put yourself out there, you try new things, you share something new type. And then there's a ring outside of that where then you like lose your shit and you've gone too far, and you don't. So it's like this middle circle. Like that's the juiciness of life. We don't want to push ourselves too far that we have a breakdown. Like there's a reason the armor's up. And so, but what is it to start like realizing, this cage feels good, but does it? Because I can't do this thing and I can't talk about this thing and I'm afraid to try this thing and I carry this anxiety or fear all the time
or I'm not getting what I need from the people around me.
Yeah, exactly. And then I'm resentful and and I'm not self-expressed and I'm not satisfied or happy. So and that's what we're looking at, playing in that area. But you get to, you choose where you do that. And some people aren't deserving, of you taking your armor down. So it's, cultivating more people like that in your life that you can trust in that way.
So what I'm really hearing is that it's all about it's like a very personal choice, like what feels good for you, what you feel comfortable with, what's safe based on your set of circumstances and experiences.
And then pushing yourself a little outside that. Yes, exactly.
Excellent.
Yep.
Cool.
Okay, so we're just going to move forward with mindful posting and boundaries. CROMMAEA offers multiple windows into personal space, a hyper-exposed setting. Frequently, we offer a perspective of ourselves that is a manufactured version of how we imagine others to see us. We allow others to view us through strategically placed lenses to demonstrate our charisma, our sexuality, our strengths. These offer a satisfying view, but in fact are a barrier dividing the viewer from the reality of who we are. Rare viewers who invest deeper and are willing to explore the spaces between will see what is unavailable to most. How do others perceive us, and how long can you know someone before they truly expose themselves to you? This exploration was an experiment into how we allow others to view us and what our true nature is, and when and where we open ourselves to others. The exhibition challenges the audience to take their time to investigate what they see and what they do not, allowing the viewer to gain insight. People's ability to perceive the truth of their interactions relies heavily on their own self-awareness and their understanding of both a macro view and a larger view of themselves and those around them. We consider the consequences of intimacy and the impact relationships leave on the psyche. Dr. Gunsaullus, you speak about radical acceptance. If we are holding back from any part of our experience, if our heart shuts out any part of who we are, of what we feel, we are fueling the fears and feelings of separation that sustain the trance of unworthiness. That was a quote from your book that we really enjoyed.
That's a quote from someone else that I was quoting in my book, I think, I believe.
Okay.
We can double check it, and we'll just edit in the right.
Okay.
Right? Yeah.
I'm pretty sure, because is that maybe Tara Brock's work, I think. I'm trying to remember who
about
that
radical acceptance, and that sentence there, if we are holding
yeah,
back
because I think
from
it's
any
a
part
book
of our
called that, and now I'm
experience.
forgetting whose book it is. Yeah, I'm pretty sure that's somebody else I was quoting, because that's not. I know that's not language. I know how to use well.
Totally fair.
Yeah, I will double back and clarify, see if I can find the appropriate citation for that.
Okay.
Our work surrounds these ideas of radical acceptance of the raw human body. Being aware of thoughts and patterns and comparisons is the first step to setting our minds free from the binding construct of negative social expectations. There is harm being done to our psyche if we are constantly viewing and pursuing the perfect post. We are taking our self-worthiness and leaving it in the hands of others. By repeating these segmented behaviors, we build unhealthy neuro-linguistic patterns and responses. Dr. Jen, in your book, you state that this topic can be simplified in an easy equation. Attractiveness equals worthiness. You also talk a lot about your triangle of awareness. Thoughts, your interpretations of what is going on, leads to your emotions, such as embarrassment, fear, and shame, and bodily sensations, such as tightness, nausea, warmth, or butterflies in a specific location inside. After reading your book, we were inspired by the sections at the end of each chapter that propelled the reader from thinking to doing. Based upon your framework and your questions about healthy relationship building, we were inspired to come up with a self-check-in guide to healthy posting. So we kind of touched upon this just now, which is really exciting. We want to know, what do you think of this framework for posting with personal and mindful boundaries? And do you have any suggestions to add to our framework? So we had, I think I'd like to add in the idea of pausing first. I think that should be implemented after listening to what you just said. I think that's the first step. Then we went on to, and this is based off of our previous discussion. So
cool.
Motivations. What is your motivation for the post? What are you hoping to gain? Who is your audience? Goals. What do I hope to achieve or benefit from? in regards to the content of this post, communication, how clear was your communication? Respect. Do you feel respected within your choice of content? What do you think about that?
I think it's great. I think, am I respecting others?
Am I respecting others?
Yeah. Yeah, no, I think that's,
Do you think that's something that could work for people? Because I feel like we are living in a world that's really fast paced, and this is why I think it is important to highlight the pause at first. But I don't know if people will use it, but I'm wondering if it's sort of a nice,
right? Yeah,
just to give like a gentle boundary for yourself for building mindfulness instead of just impulsively posting without taking into consideration, am I putting myself in a vulnerable position?
Yeah.
I'm not taking these things into consideration.
Yeah, I think, and maybe you want to put yourself in a vulnerable position, but are you just, just taking the time to reflect on all of those things, and asking yourself, is there anything I'm really afraid of here?
Fear should be added in. Would it be okay if we added that in? Fear, is there anything I'm afraid of?
Yeah, or what am I most afraid of here, of happening or not happening? Which could be like, I share this really personal thing and nobody likes it, or people attack me, or make fun of me or something. And again, it's just a reflection point of getting to the heart of what's going on.
Right.
Yeah, I feel like I do social media posting, and sometimes I go back and I delete my posts after posting them out of fear of maybe being too personal or having a personal opinion be broadcast and then getting cold feet and being like, oh, am I opening myself up to this platform?
It's hard. I mean, it's hard because it feels icky. I know that feeling really well. I also know then it can take a lot of emotional labor then to engage with people online and explain yourself or defend yourself, or to engage with other people who maybe aren't trying to mindfully engage with you.
Right.
So those are all thoughts. I mean, I guess another question that would be nice is like, am I being kind to myself? Because sometimes there could be some, self-deprecating things.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, this would be amazing if this was taught like in middle school and high school. Yeah.
Right. Can I ask a follow-up question, actually, just out of curiosity?
Yeah.
What do you define as being vulnerable? Like, how do you define vulnerability?
Yeah, vulnerability it's funny because it's more, I know it more as a felt sense of that it is, vulnerability often feels like fear mixed with openness, right? Because that really is what it is. Versus like shame is very shut down. Anger is kind of a tight ball that we feel, which actually makes us feel quite powerful, but we could be really disconnected from the moment and disconnected from others. So vulnerability is, there's like an anxiety or a fear around it. And it has this sense or belief that you are exposed and open to judgment, right? Because vulnerability does mean you are open to attack in some way. But often folks think it means then weakness. So, in a military battle, if you're vulnerable, you've got some weakness there that you need to cover up and protect. But it's like the opposite when it comes to emotions. It takes so much courage and so much strength to open up in that way and be with your fear and choose to move through it. So I don't know. Does that help?
Yeah.
I think it does. Definitely.
Yeah, because, especially today, we talk about words become buzzwords very quickly. And I think that one of the things, in my own experience of figuring out who I am as a feminist was to try and define the terminology that we use and why I'm using that terminology and what it means to me by, to have an expert on the panel.
It's
your take on it.
It's a really good question. And like authenticity, like I don't, right? We talked about that. I was like, I don't know. It's like layers and some of them are closer to it. I just feel like it's a lot of visuals and it's a lot of felt sense, but these are such embodied lived experiences. We don't have good words for them.
Right.
Right.
This is how we form our human connections, is if we're not creating vulnerability for ourselves and being courageous and letting ourselves be seen, then it's harder to build these special online relationships that have any authenticity if it's super curated. So it is important that we, even though it's hard, I know it's hard because I experience it all the time. I do it all the time. I post and then I get shameful and I go back and I delete it. And then I say, was that necessary? I don't even think I saved that photo. I should have saved it. And all of these, it's such a spiral and it's just a photo. And how many people are really looking at my story out of all the stories, truthfully? And do they really care? No, they're probably like, oh, hey, Alana posted a picture of her cat. The cat's cute. On to the next thing.
Yeah. I'm in the same position, but I don't take it to the post phase. Like I get all the way through making a post and then I delete it before I put it online because I'm like, people are going to think I'm stupid. Like,
God.
And so it's kind of a similar thing, but I feel like, and as an artist who's trying to build their brand and gain exposure, and as somebody who speaks about, business and the arts, like, I really feel like I have to have a public persona, and that Instagram and social media offers me a sense of credentials in the public eye. And so if I can't get there, then I'm missing out on a whole world of professional access,
It's true. People are now, you are sort of expected to be participating in social media. I feel like, and if you're not, people will wonder why.
Well, yeah. And like, you're not legit, or you just started doing this, or you're bullshitting us. So you guys should make a pact that every time you go to do that, you send it to the other person and you get their feedback. And then maybe they edit it a little bit, or they tell you how it might be read. And then you're like, great, here, go post it. Yeah.
So I think that because through the process of making this artwork, I would send photos of my making the work to Alana. Alana would post them and then I would share her posts.
That's true.
I was like, oh, thank God Alana's posting, like post. I'm here too. Like,
and I'm like, thank goodness Marta's taking those good photos. So good with the camera. So it's a good team. It's a good team.
Collaborating at a distance. We've been doing this for a long time. So for us, it's like, in the sense of that relationship piece, there's a lot of trust in order to like I didn't write the questions. Alana wrote the questions, but I'm confident that she can speak for me, and I can chime in. And so it's like this balance of that vulnerability. When we first started making this work, I think that it was like we learned a lot about each other really quickly in a really volatile way.
It's true. It was really, it was hard.
Wow. Oh, wow.
Hard. I don't think either one of us expected to have to be at such a distance this time, because it's a lot of fun to get together to make work. That's why we make work together, because we're friends and we like each other's company. So it's really intense at a distance, and you can't have the same sort of exchange in a sense as you can in person. But I will say that the tools at hand definitely made it possible for us, which is really cool.
Yeah. And I feel like we were like, I think that we kind of reversed roles from from what our last time exhibiting together was, which was also at a distance. But, it's in sort of a different world. And I think that we're really starting to feel like how pertinent social media and the video connection has
really
become.
is.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Well, thank you, Dr. Jen. Thank you for taking the time to join us for this today. It was really
Absolutely.
great to.
Well, I've been impressed how much you guys boiled those questions down
Oh, well,
and the
thank you.
concepts down. Because I was like, oh, they really, when I glanced through it, I was like, they did a good job.
Thank you.
It's all Alana, really.
That's
Because I was
exciting to
like, should I block off like 3 hours for this? Like, I wasn't sure how long we'd be on. So I'm impressed.
Oh, good. I'm glad. I'm so glad to hear that's very encouraging because, like Marta said, we've really reversed roles here. And so for me, I feel like I've been in a very vulnerable position working on the content and all of this.
Having to talk about it.
Words.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's a lot of thinking instead of doing. I'm a doer. I like to just have my hands on things and get messy.
Right.
And this time I had to build the work and I was like, am I making the right decision? And do I know how to weld?
That's awesome.
Yeah.
So it was.
So thank you. Different. Thank you for your inspiring words. That's exciting. Very encouraging.
Cool. Good to see both of you.
Nice to see you too. Thank you.
Good work. All right. Take care.
Bye.
Bye.